Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our Careerfly reports about COVID-19 related streaming. And this time, we will be reporting you about how is the situation in Switzerland. So please tune in to get new information, as well as please follow us into our social network, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. So now I will introduce to our speaker of today. Hello. Okay. Great, thank you so much. And I also forgot to introduce myself as well. My name is Noming, and I'm from Careerfly. I am a career consultant, and I also take over for the international candidates who wants to work in Japan as well. So let's get into our talk today. Thank you for your time today. So I would like to start off our talk about how is the current situation of Geneva, because as you know, in Japan we have emergency state declared since April, and it has been extended until May 6th, but it has been extended now until the end of May. So current situation is we're under emergency state of declarance. So how is the situation in Geneva? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Oh, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which has been kind of kept low, and the curve has been flattened over the last, I
Okay.
would say, week to 2 weeks. Because I remember at one point in early April, especially as I checked the Federal Council website, like the what's it called, the BAG. I'm not sure what it stands for in German,
Okay.
but the website used to report the number of cases since yesterday. And it used to be an increase of like 1,000, almost 2,000 a day. It was really insane watching the numbers climbing up. And as of yesterday, I think there was only an increase of about 50 cases.
Okay.
So we have slowed things down.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, as of April 27th, we've been reopening semi-essential businesses, because like during the emergency lockdown, it was just essential places like grocery stores, like takeout, like food delivery places, hospitals, pharmacies. And as of end of April, so we've had we've had semi-essential businesses such as physiotherapists, therapists, salons, beauticians, like places where you don't get too many people congregated at once.
Okay.
And as of next Monday, we're actually reopening everything.
Oh, wow.
at first we were debating whether or not to reopen bars and restaurants along with everything else, but it seems like they went ahead and every place will be opening as of Monday, so including schools, stores, whatever else. And it brings with it a lot of questions because a lot of people are worried about a second wave of infection. We've just gotten the curve under control, what's going to happen if just suddenly we get a crazy increase in the number of cases again. To combat this, they're launching a new app which is supposed to kind of track people's movements.
Oh wow! Okay.
In places like restaurants and bars, you're not allowed to enter unless you provide your full name and your contact details.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to keep a 2-meter distance between tables, like no more than 4 people to a table unless you're a family.
Okay.
Things like that.
I see.
Dubious whether that measure will be effective, but we'll see. As per the hygiene practices, I would say we've been recommended to keep the distance. We've been recommended to wash our hands, use hand sanitizer, but masks have not been reinforced at all.
Okay.
And it's strange because I think on the one side you can argue that masks are essential medical supplies that should be kept for hospitals and healthcare workers. Yes. But then on the other side, when you don't know who's infected, it would be so much more efficient if everybody was able to put on a mask and protect themselves and each other.
Okay.
And it just makes me question, what's going to happen, for instance, on public transport when people start going back to work and going shopping and heading out, and it can get pretty crowded. It's not Tokyo level crowded, but the main tram lines can be pretty full, and there's no way to avoid breathing in that air.
Okay. So how do you deal with the shortage of masks? Do you wear masks, or how does that work?
So thankfully we haven't had too much of a shortage of masks, not like in the United States.
Yeah.
In most places, I think pharmacies have not been able to supply masks as much before. I think they re-upped their supply because now they are kind of recommending that service providers at least wear masks.
Okay.
And mostly we've been ordering online. My mother-in-law has been very proactive on this.
Okay.
She ordered a lot of cloth masks. Cloth masks for us very early on, before even the lockdown.
I see.
So she kind of ordered before everybody else did. They're the ones with the filters that prevent small particles from coming in, and we have a good amount of changeable filters.
Okay.
So for me and my husband, when we go out, we put on the masks when we enter crowded spaces, any buildings or any grocery stores. Other times we just take the mask off and we just kind of hand sanitize our hands as much as we can and avoid touching our faces.
I see. So do you mean public places, they don't also reinforce such of wearing masks to go inside?
No, it's very voluntary, and I think it depends on who's able to even procure a mask in this time. I would say at the beginning of the pandemic, most people did not wear a mask. They mostly, I would say, they mostly tried to keep their distance. And it's been interesting to see how the measures have built up over time, because in the beginning, the grocery stores didn't have any screens protecting the cashiers from the people. They didn't have any, they didn't really enforce the distance rule. People just kind of did that consciously because in Switzerland, people are pretty responsible, and they're able to follow the rules and suggestions. So it's been interesting watching that go from in the first 2 weeks when things were crazy, to go from that to slowly they introduce the little small screens. They start drawing lines on the ground with tape to show you where to stand. They start some of the higher end stores, especially, they would have somebody waiting at the door who would sanitize your hands and help you wipe down shopping cart handles and such, and let you go in. And then as weeks went on, they also developed a token system. So they give you a token when you give in, and only a certain number of people can be in the store at a given time.
I see.
So that's how it's been unfolding. And it feels like as we near the end of the pandemic, the amount of measures have been even better.
Increased? Yes,
Which
yes, of course.
yeah, which is like it comes on slowly and a little, maybe a little too late, but it is. I think it's good to have these in place for maybe the next pandemic.
I see, definitely. So that's very interesting because in Japan they also have the same measurements as well, but they have been implementing as of very late as well with the plastic sheets and also as well as gloves for the cashiers as well, and as well as with the tape on the floor to distance the customer, and as well as currently they have been also doing similar situation with the token system where they limit customers to go inside. So when you have to go inside the store, you have to line up for about 30-45 minutes to go one by one, so to regulate the traffic inside the stores as well. So I think it's been also doing quite well. So that's interesting to hear. Yes, yes. Okay, I see. So you have mentioned that like these measures for like day-to-day life, for rules, for social distancing, as well as like brushing, like washing their hands and sanitary measures. How about like more bigger like support from the government for people who are affected by the pandemic? Or, for example, in Japan, the government is issuing 100,000 yen per person to support their lifestyle during the pandemic, and they will start implementing it this month. So people have to apply, and they'll receive them later. So, is there any situation similar to that happening in Geneva as well?
Yeah, for sure. Switzerland is already doing very well economically. I mean, it's one of the, I think, highest ranking countries in the world for economic stability. So I think this showed very well in their COVID-19 response financially. As an example, the company that I work for, we're a very small company. We have about less than 10 employees based in Switzerland. So for us, we had let's just say that for a company that does a lot of in-person events, the COVID-19 affected us pretty hard.
Okay.
So we were able to apply for a grant from the Swiss government
Okay.
that allows employees to reduce their working hours but claim back a majority of their salary. So my situation, for instance, is that I went from working. So here we measure the working hours in percentages. So if you work full time, you work 100%. If you work, half time, you work 50%. So 20% equals a day. And for here, so I went from working 100%, full salary, to working 50%. And for the other 50% of those lost working hours, the Swiss government is able to pay me for 90% of my lost salary. So in the end, I still gain about, I still earn about 80% of my salary rather than only 50%, which has been super helpful.
Okay.
And I know that they're also giving out a lot more unemployment benefits, or allowing you to do that. They're also really trying to help out small businesses to kind of ride out this crash before being able to get back on their feet. I don't know as much the details beyond my company.
Of course.
But but I think for sure we've been doing not too bad compared to other countries which were more hard hit.
Of course. That's very interesting as well. So that grant, would you say it is easy to apply and get it for other companies as well, or do you think it's like a little bit more harder to get grants like that, or what is your thought on that?
I'm not quite sure I can answer that actually. I think it's hard to know, but what I will say is that for sure it seems like the requirements are less severe than before the crisis. So, whereas before you might have had to provide a lot of justifications and a lot of documentation, here you still have to. I think it is a little bit tricky because I remember our office manager, who it was in charge of filing for this benefit, she did have to do a lot of back and forth. But I think it's also because Switzerland does require like everything is pretty much by the book. So you do have to provide everything, a lot of justifications. But in the end, I think they're much more lenient. And even from just, other perspectives, like filing for your tax returns are usually due on April 1st or March 31st. So something like that. And they were actually delayed by 3 months because they said, like, this is a hard time. Like, people don't even know what's happening to their finances anymore. We're giving everybody an extension.
Okay.
A lot of bill payments also have been like able to be delayed. There's like a lot more grace period. Usually you get an invoice and you pay it within 30 days, but I think a lot of places have been forgiving it if you're 1 or even 2 months late.
Okay, that's great. So at least people have like a bit of slack to like have a little bit of
a little bit of breathing room.
Yes, because of I'm pretty sure a lot of people are affected by it as well. Similar here in Japan as well. The amount of the tax or the insurance are also being able to extend to a certain degree as well, so people can ask for their ward office to extend their bills to pay a little bit later. So I think it's also a great idea the government is similarly implementing these changes as well. That's great. Okay, I see. So I wanted to ask you about like how is the majority of the people's reaction towards the pandemic right now? Are people still being for example, hoarding and fear? Because of the fear they hoard a lot of things such as toilet paper because of false information or things like that. How are the people in Geneva are reacting to the pandemic, or how were they reacting first and how they are reacting right now? How would you say that?
Right, so I think this is best illustrated by like a short like timeline kind of story. So when the news was first announced that schools and businesses would be closing down, I would say that was around March 11th or 12th. And March 13th was my birthday, and it was a Friday.
Oh.
So I think that day I canceled my plans for gatherings because I thought, this is too risky. And my husband and I, we went shopping instead. And we were not sure, we were debating, should we put on masks, should we not put on? We put it on, and I think we were one of the only, 4 people we saw that day, in that entire day, who wore masks.
Wow.
Yeah, and we, I was like, it's okay, they will forgive us because we look Asian, so they'll think just Asians wearing masks. But I remember getting very strange looks from people. And then Friday around 4 p.m. we went to the grocery store, and it was madness. It was chaos. When you went in, the canned goods, the non-perishable food section was just empty. Like, I went in hoping to find a can of beans and some corn to make some chili, and there was just nothing left. Wow. And people were just scrambling past each other, and yet also kind of suspiciously trying to avoid each other, but you didn't have the space to avoid each other, and things were running out. Like, checkout lines were crazy, parking lots are full. You could see people with carts piled full with toilet paper and tissues. Like, this was even before we heard that the U.S. was piling up toilet paper. And that was also the weekend that the U.S. was closing flights from Europe as well.
I see.
So there was just a lot of panic in the air. And then the following week, my friends also tried going to the supermarket, and it was still a bit insane for them. And I remember also some shelves were still empty. We had to go to 3 different supermarkets to find most of the things we needed, but we were able to get them.
Okay.
And then I would say, the second week of the lockdown, things returned to normal. Stores-wise, the stores were able to restock very quickly, and you were able to find anything you needed. And I think people calmed down once they realized, okay, the stores are not running out of supplies.
Okay.
As for the distancing, I think, there was a lot of disbelief and resistance from people at first, and even some of my colleagues or others who thought, is it really that bad? Is it really serious? And people were not ready to take it seriously.
Okay.
And they saw it as a major inconvenience and as something that they were being forced to do that they didn't want to do. And it's funny because especially with, the elderly who are at most at risk for this, they were the ones who really did not care as much. They were still going out around socializing, running their errands. I think they're also, maybe they're less afraid of it somehow because they've also lived for a very long time. But it just it was very interesting to see that it was also younger people who were more staying in and isolating themselves than the elder people. And because there was no ban on going outside, unlike in France where you had to have specific reasons to leave your house, you would see a lot of people going in the park. You would see a lot of people, taking walks, strolling, exercising outside. I would say halfway through the shutdown, so early April, my husband and I, we went for a walk on this long trail, and it was just completely crowded of people,
wow.
especially because the weather is so nice. It's like 25 degrees.
Okay.
And you couldn't keep a 2-meter distance between all the people on that trail. It was just impossible. So you just kind of, I don't know, turn away when somebody's like walking past you, when they're like, running and out of breath and like breathing in your face. You just go like, okay.
So how about like the government? Like, were they, putting out information on, TVs, or, like giving out announcements to implement the social distancing and, staying inside all the time? Because in Tokyo as well, in Japan, they always announce on TV to like stay inside home every day. So because of that, some surveys said that the people who go outside or without a certain necessity have been decreased. So how is that there? Have they been like not implemented changes like that, or people just don't care?
No, for sure. There's this one very typical red poster about information about COVID-19 that has all like the safety measures. I would say, stay at home as much as possible, social distancing, hand washing, sanitation, and masks only if you're sick. I think that's not even included in the poster. That poster has pretty much been attached on the door of every single building.
Wow.
Like almost everywhere you go, like next to elevators, wherever it would grab somebody's attention. It was distributed very quickly because I was in Mongolia until March 1st, and then when I returned on March 1st, already like these notices were everywhere.
Okay.
And you would hear this information, everywhere on newspapers, on TV, on the internet. Something funny I noticed is that even on YouTube, sometimes instead of the ads, you get a public service announcement from the Swiss government, and it's the government's recommendations on what you should do. So they bought out the ad slots, or maybe partner with YouTube to enable that as well. It's really, they're really trying to get your attention in any way possible. So even on Facebook and YouTube, they'll usually have the link at the top that says, don't listen to like false news. Look at the Swiss government's website here.
I see. So currently now, how are the people's reaction? Are they, settled into like a lockdown lifestyle, or are they still like sort of, ignoring these measures that is implemented by the government? How would you say that?
I think it really depends on the people, because I have spoken to plenty of people who, now that they've gotten over the panicky phase and things are calming down, are actually really enjoying working from home and having a lot of free time and not having to commute, and just being at home with their loved ones. It's actually, myself included, it's sad to say that it's an enjoyable time for me, but it has taken a pandemic to really slow down the pace of life and enjoy my own life without having to follow like the typical social routine of going out, commuting, coming back. And then there's other people, of course, who are really detesting this issue, because it also depends a lot, I think, if you have children. Like if you have children and your children are home all day, then you have to keep them entertained, you have to keep them educated, you have to, just make sure that, they have something to do, and that takes away a lot of your time from work.
Of course.
So it's really complicated, I think, depending on your situation. And some other people, of course, because their businesses and their livelihood is at stake, they're impatient for this to be over so that they can get back to work and start generating revenue again, and getting money to pay their employees. So I would really say it's about 50-50.
Yeah, of course. But like for you personally, the outcome was slightly positive, I guess?
Yeah. I won't lie. I think we had these weekly check-ins with our Geneva team, and we would kind of talk about what we're going through. And something I did personally was that when I returned from Mongolia, because I had transited through Seoul, South Korea, I decided to self-quarantine myself at home for 2 weeks as a precautionary measure to protect my colleagues. And So I had been nearing the end of my 2 weeks, and I thought I was going to go back to work when the whole country went into shutdown. So I was ahead of the lockdown
Okay,
curve.
okay.
So what
So
is it
you
now?
had a little
So
bit
I've
of
been in lockdown for like what,
yeah.
9-10 weeks.
Oh, 9-10 weeks.
Yeah, so two months and a week. And for me, the beginning was just very difficult and very miserable. But I think once you adjust to having your own working from home schedule, and once you find things to do, things that are fulfilling to do during that time, it becomes much more easier to adjust to it. And now that I've found this new routine, it's so difficult to even think about going back to the typical 9 to 5, instead of being able to get out of my bed and enjoy coffee and then come sit at my desk and take this call.
Of course. So what was like in your routine that you implemented during this time that positively affected you so far? What would be the one thing that you were affected really positively?
Oh my gosh, you're going to laugh, but Animal Crossing.
Oh my god.
No, but Animal Crossing, yes, but I've been playing so many, like hundreds of hours. I'm sure I haven't checked. But beyond that, also I've learned the importance of having a morning routine.
Okay.
Because before I just used to roll out of bed, take as little time as I can to get ready, and just run out the door. But now that I have time, I will get up, I will, get ready for the day, and then I will sit down and do a little meditation to start off each morning. And it just provides a very centered and grounded place to begin my day. And things feel less chaotic and less hectic. And, with this time, continuing this, I also reflect by self-reflect by journaling, just, reading more. There's a lot of things you can do at this time.
Okay. I see. I also remember one of our colleagues in Italy mentioned that because of people who are being affected by the pandemic, especially their mental health, the company is reinforcing like a therapist session 101 for the workers to take care of their mental health as well. Do you know if something similar is happening there, or just how people are taking care of themselves during this time, or what are they doing to feel better during this time, do you think? I mean, of course, playing Animal Crossing helped you the most. But what would you say?
So I don't know if any organizations have implemented something like that, and that's also a wonderful thing to do in this time. What I will say is that personally, I go to therapy either weekly or bi-weekly, as in every other week, depending on my own need, because I find it a very helpful and therapeutic resource. And because I know my therapist very well, I've been seeing her for about 1.5 years. I was able to switch to online therapy sessions, and it didn't feel too strange. I was already used to taking video calls and such, so for me, taking therapy to a video call was not too difficult. Whereas for other people who wanted to start out, I think video therapy is a bit more difficult.
Of course.
And I think it really depends on other places. Like I said, we have a weekly check-in call, which we never really did before. It's just 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a week for just our team to check in and just kind of express, if we're feeling, okay, or if we need any help. And our supervisors and our colleagues are always trying to offer us any help that they can. My workplace also has launched a series called Mobius Cares, which is 3 weekly webinars on different topics, leadership and, self-improvement kind of topics, and it's offered for free. So it's we've also been offered some internal courses, things like managing our time for free, because usually we would charge a pretty high price for such content that we offer, but during this time it's a way of kind of giving back to the community and helping out people. So yeah, I would say that's one of the measures we've had.
I see, that's great. So did you have any feedback from the measures that your company did, or what do you think of those kind of measures are implemented by companies similar to yours? Do you think it's helpful to the community, or do you think it's what you call it, during this time people are forced to be productive, but some people like to also enjoy themselves during this time, take care of themselves. But some
Mm-hmm.
people also really reinforce, like, being protective and brushing off
Mm-hmm.
your CV, and then also like doing job search, or like to like sort of
Mm-hmm.
think about like your future. So what do
Mm-hmm.
you like? Do you think like about these measures?
I think I think it helps in a way that it makes you feel like it's not just you. I think something crazy about this pandemic is that everybody in the world is experiencing it to one degree or another.
Yeah.
And especially in the countries that have been hard affected, everybody is having to go through this phase of being locked in, not being able to move, not having this freedom. So to have gatherings, whether it's with 5 people or 100 people online or
Mm-hmm.
over chat or whatever else, it gives you this feeling like you're not alone and there's
Uh-huh.
other people there, and you get to chat and maybe do like small like group sessions, like where you just get to kind of talk and just see how other people are coping and how you're coping, and just
Yeah.
kind of like try to pick up other people's best practices as well.
Okay.
And I think there's also a weird imbalance between this is a time where everybody is impacted, emotionally or mentally in some
Mm-hmm.
way, and yet we're also still expected to be productive. And
Yeah.
I think it's hard to find the balance between
Mm-hmm.
that, trying to continue on business as usual, or I don't know, just trying to take care of yourself. Um,
Of course, of course. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. A lot of people are like, I would say, sadly, negatively being affected by the pandemic as well. And I know for a fact that, like, in America, there are a lot of unemployment happening in
mhm,
America. So that is like the biggest shock to me, that
mhm,
just people like losing their jobs that easily during the pandemic
mhm,
and stuff. Do you know like how is the like the employment or
mhm,
unemployment situation happening in Switzerland, or if the government is like
mhm,
supporting for unemployment
mhm,
or taking care of the people?
mhm. Yeah, it's interesting because my company is U.S. based, but we're like the Swiss office.
Okay.
And unfortunately, my company has let go of around one third of our employees. I mean,
Oh
we're a very
wow.
small company, but it's in 2 rounds of layoffs. We laid off about 4 or 5 people, and then the second round we let go of even more than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have had their hours reduced. Luckily, because we're in Switzerland and because the government is able to give us financial aid during this time,
Yeah.
we've been able to avoid firing too many people and
Mm-hmm.
just able to get support to keep them employed instead. Whereas on the U.S. side, they've been less lucky in that
Yeah.
they don't have the same kind of social benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same government support, so they have to let go of people. And it's been very sad saying goodbye to a lot of my close colleagues.
I see.
Um, as in Geneva, I mean, I unfortunately don't know the overall situation,
Of
but
course, of
among
course.
my friends and people I know, nobody has lost their jobs.
Okay.
Everybody is still able to work.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are able to work remotely, or they have their
Mm-hmm.
hours reduced, like I did.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, I think unless you work in like a service job, but even those, I would say, have not been too adversely affected because restaurants are able to stay open for
Mm-hmm.
like takeout and delivery food.
Yeah.
Shops have been able to, maybe not in person like salespeople, but they're
Mm-hmm.
still operating online, so they need more people than ever
Okay.
working in their warehouses.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I mean, even like food delivery apps, there's like a higher demand for drivers and
Mm-hmm.
people working behind the scenes more than ever.
Yeah.
So you are at least able to find
Mm-hmm.
either some sort of temporary solution, which may unfortunately put you at risk,
Yeah.
or you're able to work from home with reduced hours, hopefully.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting because, unemployment rate and everywhere around the world, as well as same as here in Japan as well, have been increasing. But like from your talk, it seems like Geneva or Switzerland in general are relatively low in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
laying off unemployment rate. That's good. That's a good thing to hear about it. I see. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as well as like during this time, like here in Japan, a lot of people being laid off, and then they want to, of course, like find their next job, and they're using this lockdown time to like brush up their CV, and like doing like sort of like a online job hunting, which is very new to Japan, because Japan is known to be very like face-to-face interviews, and wearing suits and being very polite and strict to the rules. But these days, with the online job hunting, and remote work implemented as well, job hunting situation has been, I guess I would say, positively affected for the better in the future, because these measures can be implemented, and these are the proof that for in Japan, these things can be like for the better, changed for the better. So, is there any like a positive impact out of Geneva? Would you say, like in whether it's job related or whether it's any kind of other things related?
Sorry, I was
Oh, okay.
muting my microphone.
All right.
I think it's a bit tricky because during this time, a lot of places have also implemented hiring freezes.
Oh,
I know
okay.
of several, even NGOs, and but mostly, like I would say, the private sector has had to stop their hiring, just because profits are less, incomes like and revenues are decreased, so you're not really able to employ even your current employees.
Okay.
And then for the job hunt, I would say, so like first a little bit of a background on Geneva's job market is that Geneva is a very special case because
Okay.
we're the home to a lot of international organizations such as the United Nations, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, etc. This is kind of the humanitarian center of the world.
Yes.
So we have a lot of international organizations who work anyway based on grants and funding by donors. So this is not really directly related to income, but rather on funding from large organizations, private donors, etc. So I think in this case, international organizations are still hiring because they usually have grants that go for years at a time, funds that have already been planned, and hiring that has already been like predicted and foreseen ahead of time.
Okay.
So I think people who are job hunting in that industry are still likely to find jobs, especially in organizations that are working to combat this crisis. In global health, such as WHO, the Global Fund. There's a bunch of the International Aid Society, whatever else, like any organization that works for bettering of global health is going to have even a surge in hiring, I would guess.
I see.
And probably not the same for private organizations. I think people are still, they may be brushing up on their CVs and working on those things from home, but I think most people, myself included, are not optimistic about the chances of finding a job this year or even into 2021. So I think it will take the economy some time to improve, and maybe after that things will start looking up.
Okay. So like more international organizations are still okay with like the hiring process with people who are looking for jobs, but the others, you would say like they're not so much what do you call it?
Yeah, it's
like
not as clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Which makes totally sense, because these organizations can, afford to hire more workers, but while as the other ones, I believe, not so much. I see. Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And as well as like, I think because we're talking about like living with the pandemic right now during the lockdown, I think there's also like, after the pandemic, or as I've mentioned, in Japan, we have this new lifestyle called living with the pandemic. And like during this time, like what do you call it, a lot of people need to get used to like new measures, new lifestyle as well, and which is very to some people confusing, but to some people very interesting and challenging, that they look back and like, oh, this was the time of this pandemic. And I guess we can like all go back and see this as a positive note. Yeah. Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's all just about, I think a lot of people have been saying that life is not going to return to normal as it was before. This is the new normal, and there will be another newer normal when places are opening up again and people are finally able to move on from this frozen kind of place to re-entering life as it was. And I hope that, people will be able to take something from this, that they'll be able to continue balancing their personal and their professional life, to be able to have more freedom to work from home, and to just remember what it felt like to take time for yourself and do things that improve your mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah, I agree as well. Yeah. Do you have like what do you call it, like hope, not so hope, but like more positive, like hopefulness towards like future for like let's say like even with your lifestyle or even with like your jobs, like in the future, like do you feel like it's all going to be fine?
Yeah, I think it'll always be challenging. I think it'll take a lot of time to adjust, and I think even in a year, 2 years time, we'll still be talking about remember what it was like during the pandemic. And yet you also see people returning to life normally, like things are going to reopen next week, and even now on the street there's more people than there were 2 weeks ago. And it just I think it's just you just have to wait and see. And I think if you were able to explore your hobbies, learn new things, learn things that improve you, like meditation or journaling, that you should remember to take this into the next phase of life. That if you're able to retain even a little bit of it, you don't have to do the same quarantine routine that you did at home, but if you're able to take even a little bit of that with you into your return to the newer normal, then I think it'll be beneficial for you.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, this is such a nice talk about like getting the information from your side and getting to know what has been happening in Geneva as well, because I was wondering, Geneva borders with Italy, and Italy has been very sensitive area for the pandemic as well. So it was great to learn more information from you, as well as just also get your perspective on this issue as well. This was really nice. And thank you for sharing.
No problem. My pleasure being here.
Great. Thank you. And so as well as we have just discussed about, how is the government implementing like rules during the pandemic, as well as we also talked about lifestyle. We also talked about like people's reaction and job hunting market. And thank you very much for sharing all this information. And hopefully we can also talk more later about these same topics and see how different it will be in the future compared to this time as well.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that during that time we'll have a more positive situation around us.
Hope so. Yes. Great. Okay. So thank you very much. And let's talk later.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds great. Have a good evening.
You too. Have a nice day. See you.
Bye.
So thank you for watching. We have just streamed our situation sharing from Switzerland side. I hope you had some insight from our speaker Jen from Geneva, and please also follow us on our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well, and let's tune into our next streaming as well. Have a nice day. Thank you.